Hello everyone and welcome to our Circle and Salve Women. Today we are going to focus in on fight, flight, or freeze. Now I remember being in college and sitting there listening to the difference between fight or flight, and I took so much interest in it. And yet I remember sitting there going, oh my goodness, there's gotta be something in between. What about those moments when you neither take flight or you fight? And so it was really nice. I remember hearing the word freeze for the first time. I go, oh, they added that in. I called it freaking out. I remember thinking that, but it's so nice to have the term now politically more correct and in putting in the word freeze. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this, don't worry, we're not going to take it deep. We're not going to get dramatic. I'm going to just allow myself to be vulnerable and laugh at myself a little bit and recalling those moments that I did take fight, I did fight, and then I also did the freeze response. And really so that we can all understand the meaning of it, just going back a little bit of my life. These are physiological or psychosomatic responses that our body does as a reaction to when they encounter danger. So let's get started right away and let's see how I go about this and explain to you the difference. The very first one is fight. Now, I remember when I was in junior high. You have to remember, I'm a mother of 5 now, and then also an educator. And so I never felt that it was important or that it was anything positive or anything that would contribute any light to telling my children or my students about any time that I ever did fight. There is a time, one that I will use for this one today, for this video, so that you understand my explanation of fight. I had thrived in 7th grade. I was being bused 45 minutes to school and 45 minutes back home to a school where I really felt like I belonged. There was a lot of learning that was happening, and I just really felt comfortable in the classes. I remember being put in a pre-algebra class. It was fun. The learning was engaging, and I really felt like I had a sense of validity in the classroom. My mind could work. I could really put in great thinking, and it was acknowledged. Now, by the end of that year, sadly, my parents had received a letter stating that I had to return to our neighborhood school. And, there was nothing we could do about it at that time. So I went ahead and just planned ahead to attend the school by my 8th grade. First day of school, I was introduced by some friends that had known me in the neighborhood to, this other girl. And right away, my intuition told me that this person was not going to be my friend. She would rather be seeing me as a foe. And, knowing how that goes, you always had to watch yourself in the passing periods before and after school, during lunch, never in class. I still remember a wonderful history teacher in there, Mr. Wade, that would say, if you ever need to look at anyone's notes, take a look at Anne's. And that again made me feel like I was being recognized for my love of learning. However, when you step outside of class is when you had to deal with your peers. And it had gotten to be almost a month where I felt like I was able to go to school, learn, come back home, school, learn, come back home, and really not run into some major problems. However, this one time during a passing period, we had about a 10 to 15 minute break in between a class early in the morning. There was that one girl I had been introduced to, and she just started to really provoke me into a situation where I knew if I didn't do anything about it, and I know that sounds terrible, but if I didn't do anything about it, it would continue. It would just pursue itself to be even something worse the next day and the next day and the next day. And I did ultimately something that I could look back and go, you know what? I can say that I was in junior high at that time and made the choice that I had to make in knowing that if I was going to do something about it, it would have to be something remembered, and so that it would also be a message for everybody else to say, this is just not something you want to do or to, unto me or mess with me. Let's be friends rather than foes. And so I recall deciding to fight. And I don't know what was going on with my head, but because I had to put up a show, I remember some, walking over and above, over some tables, up some chairs and up some tables and down some chairs and so forth to get to her several times. And I still recall the principal running as fast as they could when they realized that my eyes were fixated on a person. And before I knew it, I found myself in the principal's office explaining, really not saying a word, but responding to his comment. He had made a comment that basically got me. It ended up, because of how I responded, it got me to where I had to face the board of directors, and it got me back. Sounds silly, but because of that fight, I ended up going back to the initial school I was in. My parents had to come in and explain the situation and defend for, and be in my defense and explain that in class I'm doing just fine. And it's because of me being placed in a school that's where trouble would, began to arise for me. And so at that time, 7th grade, and then moving into 8th grade, I returned back to that school, and I never told my parents, but I remember that year before going into high school, I could not wait for my grades in the mailbox. And I remember seeing the straight A's. I went into my room, put it on my chest, laid in bed, and then I just kept it silenced to myself, because that's all that mattered to me, regardless of the judgment, regardless of what I had gone through. It was more that I knew school was about learning, and I showed that I could. Going back a few years, because you may think, well, wow, she really likes to fight. No, I did not. Okay, there was also times where I really just, without hesitation, I took flight. Now, if you have heard the other things that I've shared in the past, or my articles that I've written, I had, at that point, at elementary school, I had attended 6 elementary schools. So by 5th grade, that would have been my 5th elementary school that I'd attended. And, just to let you know, I was always the new kid every year, it seemed. Of course, let's just say it that I was the new kid every year. And so, to say the least, I didn't always know the right things to say, because if you're going from one neighborhood to another neighborhood, being the new kid in the block or in the school, you were always being put to a test. And, many times I failed, and I can say that just being innocent about it at that time. And so I remember the home that we had rented was just right up the hill from this elementary school. And I didn't want my parents to worry. I knew my siblings were running into their own issues as well. I knew better than to go home and share with them my burdens. And so I would create a fight route for me. Never did really fight, but I, in my head, called it a fight route in 5th grade. And so I knew if there was going to be someone who's going to be following me home, trying to cause some chaos and, just whatever it was that caused some heat from, again, never really in class, but whether it be during lunch or recess or so, and I knew that something was going to happen after school, I would take this route that was further away from my home, so that then when I got to this corner, when I got to the hill, I would just let people just come at my face and talk to me and just confront me, and so forth, and let it get it out. And it always seemed like, I kid you not, the biggest person that ended up having that confrontation with me. And I just always felt outnumbered at the school. And so guess what? I shamelessly ran home. So yes, I did take flight in my 5th grade year. And guess what? Every day I got to survive to do it again and again. So if you had to fast forward it and then going from one neighborhood to another, you probably can perhaps find it in your heart to understand without judgment why by the time I got into 8th grade, why I ended up making that maybe irrational decision, but it did take some time for me to process it, as the days went by, where I made that decision to fight in 8th grade. But it was in 5th grade where I shamelessly took flight. Every time that I felt like I was being confronted, or that I felt that I was in danger against my peers. So there's your fight, there's your flight. Now, the one that I'm so happy that they added, I believe, I think it was 2002, they'd been testing this term on animals, I believe from 1970s or so, but they were finally able to connect it. I could be wrong. I haven't been in college in a long time, but from what I've read, they added the word freeze. And I was like, finally, because I use the non-political term in my head, freak out, like what it happens when you don't fight and when you don't take flight. What's that in between where you do nothing at all? This term now, and again, this is the physiological or psychosomatic response, right? Mind and body reacting. And this is where you absolutely just freeze up. And so for me, again, just making this light, I know there are stories out there where my heart goes out to you, where you've had these moments where you felt that you were helpless, that you could have done something about it, and your body just wouldn't allow you to. It's okay. Give yourself forgiveness, because it is in the wrong of someone else and not you when you decide to freeze. So with me, this was a time where, again, going back to 5th grade, remember that was my year of flight, I had actually ended up having a good friend that year, one good friend. I would walk over to her where she lived, and then we would normally walk to school. Now, maybe there were people who saw the connection there, and that there was some kind of finally I had a friend moment, that then there were people that began to instigate the situation. And I remember this was probably by springtime, where one of our teachers, it took 2 teachers to teach this class. And so one of the teachers suggested that we have a meeting, and I believe it was like during recess or so, and 5th grade. And so I sat with like 3 other girls and then that other friend of mine who I considered to be dear that year. And as our teacher was starting to talk and really just trying to mediate the situation, trying to figure out what was going on, mouths started to run, and there were people starting to really, I felt like it was starting to escalate to a situation where it wasn't about my friend and I anymore. It was about what people were saying that were, in 5th grade matters, that really caused it to be more than it really was. And I remember sitting down, and all it took was, I think I responded in a way where I felt like, I had stated something where it was more of like, I can't believe this is happening. Just maybe one sentence or so. And one of the girls had said something, and next thing I know, I saw my friend get up from her chair, walk across the table. This was a round table, and then all of a sudden come toward me. And, right away, I thought to myself, you need to get up, you need to defend yourself and do something. In my mind, I was processing, how in the world do I address this when she is my friend? And why would I do anything to her? There's no way she would do anything to me, because she is my friend. And so, and that I am a friend to her. And so when she did that, my perhaps pride told me, stand up at least and face her, and just make sure that you are at least still at level with her, and standing up and looking at her right in the eye. It didn't even take that long for her, as she came to me and I faced her, that all of a sudden I heard someone saying, hit her. And before I knew it, she had taken her right fist to my left eye, and there I went down. And I recall being on the floor and saying to myself, I should have hit her first. But there was so much peace in me, because I had something told me in my heart, you did the right thing. You would have never hit her. And so, just like in my article, I had stated, one friend did the right thing that day. And I walked around with a black eye for the longest time, but that was okay, because to me, it really made me feel that I got to learn something about myself quietly. Even though I was only in 5th grade, I just knew that there was some type of loyalty in me, where I knew that I at least had certain borders within my heart and my soul and my spirit, of knowing to what level would I ever push myself when it came to betrayal. That's a strong word. 5th grade, probably didn't even use that. But, you know, it was important for me because when I look back, I could smile at it and go, I did the right thing. So now, going back, let's understand again. Fight is when your body feels like you're in danger and you're like, let's do something, right? And we're going to go ahead and, you know, fight this out. Flight is when you're like, maybe tomorrow, let's not do anything today, but let's just go the other way and run like crazy and live to talk about it. And then, of course, there's that freeze where you go, I neither want to fight, I neither want to take flight. I'm going to just stand right here and go with whatever comes and take it in and give everybody forgiveness and just let it be, because it is what it is. And so in all those 3, please embrace yourself in knowing that there's strength in every 3 of those, you know, in every one of those, all 3 of them, because it is your business. It is within your heart to make that decision at that given moment. You may have regrets, and that's okay, because as a person, we can look back and go, why did you make that choice? That's when you get to reflect. And sometimes we do get irrational about our thoughts, and we do end up being in a state of mind where we feel danger and we react immediately. Sometimes we just don't have time to think things through, and that's okay. You still have to understand that you're growing. Sometimes it is in our biggest mistakes, whether we define it as our biggest mistakes, where we grow the most. But don't consider yourself to be a mistake. Just understand that and give yourself forgiveness to know things happen. And, you know, as you get older, you can look back and go, yeah, that happened. And I'll probably tell somebody that later on in the near future. But you know what? That was something that was for me to reflect upon and ask myself, who do I want to become? Who do I become an example of, and not an example of what not to be? So just keep going with yourself and be an example of what to be. And even if you feel like you're not an example of what to be today, guess what? Reflect and do better tomorrow. So in the words of my mother, God bless us all, I hope you had fun laughing at me. It's okay, I laugh at myself all the time. And in regards to fight, flight, or freeze, whatever action you take, just know that, you know, you have to give yourself just the forgiveness to decide. Because in the moment of danger, you just know, you know, instinctively what it is that you had to do at that moment. And it's okay. So have a great day. We'll see you next time.